local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Bollinger's Books and Espresso Cafe, committed to quality service for book lovers, schools, and other institutions for over 17 years. Additional support has been provided by Cox Cable Company of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
We have a very special program on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm B.J. Williams. We're starting a series of 5 weeks called Celebrating Our Heritage, Oklahoma Writers, and we are going to focus on the variety of writers that we have in Oklahoma and the number. We have one of the largest per capita number of writers in the entire nation, and we're going to explore a little bit of that this time. And I would like to start by introducing Carolyn Hart and Judith Henry Wall, and Johnny Quarles and Merlene Lovelace. These are all writers who live and work in Oklahoma, and they are all known throughout the nation and internationally. And Carolyn, I want to ask you, just what kind of writers do we have here in Oklahoma?
Actually, we have every kind of writer in Oklahoma, from poets to authors who write mainstream novels, such as Judy Wall, and we have a lot of mystery writers, and that's my particular area. And I would mention especially Jack Bickham and Gene Hager and Bill Bernhardt and Eve Sandstrom. So I think that we can satisfy everybody's reading taste.
Okay, and these are books that we actually can find here in Oklahoma.
Oh, yes.
I think
yes, indeed.
We sometimes almost forget. It's like if they live here in Oklahoma, they can't be writers that are really published or something. So.
Can't be real writers.
Right.
Live right here at home.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think helps us have so many writers is the kinds of support that we have here. And if somebody would like to talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that maybe it had its beginnings back at the University of Oklahoma a number of years ago, when there was really the first program of its type in the nation, Walter Campbell, who was followed by Foster Harris, and they started a program that originally was in the English department at OU, but in the English department, they are not very interested in commercial, in people making a living writing, and it ended up in the School of Journalism at OU, and many generations of Oklahoma writers. I think the tradition of people being writing commercially, writing for a living, started with that program at OU, which Robert L. Duncan and Jack Bickham, and now J. Malcolm Davis is the professor in charge of that. And there are programs now other places, but that was the first.
And I just tack on to that. That is an internationally known program, because when I first started writing, I was living in Albuquerque, but I had heard so much about the University of Oklahoma program, the Oklahoma authors, and particularly the romance authors, which is my specialty, that when I started doing this seriously, and my husband and I didn't have any roots anywhere, I said, well, why don't we move to Oklahoma?
What a great reason.
Seriously, his family's here, and that was great, and all these great writers are here. So we packed up and we moved.
Well, that's great. Well, this is, besides the actual courses, there are a lot of writing groups, aren't there?
Well, I would also like to mention 2 other programs which I think are enormously helpful to writers. The University of Central Oklahoma has its Creative Studies department, headed by Dr. Lynette Word, who is also an Oklahoma writer. And they every year have an artist in residence. This year and next year it's Carolyn Wheat, who is a very nationally known mystery writer. And Sarah Orwig, another wonderful Oklahoma writer, has been very active teaching in that program. And then the other thing I would mention is the University Center at Tulsa is really launching a wonderful celebration of Oklahoma authors. Teresa Miller is in charge of that program. and she is putting together every year a festival of books celebrating the books of Oklahoma authors and authors in our region. And Teresa also has established a repository for the papers of Oklahoma authors. So if any of you all have not designated your personal papers yet or your manuscripts, I know that Teresa would be interested in having them.
Got to get them out of the house.
Well, that's important because I think a lot of Oklahoma writers, if they aren't discovered, are just on the verge of becoming extremely well known, and someday somebody's going to want to see those manuscripts, find out just what kind of computer you did use, that sort of thing. Johnny, you write Westerns. Are there other Western writers here in Oklahoma?
Well, I think Robert Conley, I'm not sure about that. I don't read Westerns. No, I mean, that's, put down.
He just writes them.
You just write them.
I always liked John Wayne. They put me out in general fiction, but they're novels set in the West. Yeah, I think there's every kind of. I want to say before we go any deeper into this, you know, no one does anything on their own or by themselves. It's a hard business to crack. And there was a lady in here talking a while ago, and Carolyn and I was talking before we went on the air that, you know, published writers, we really pull for these people that's trying to make it. I mean, we know the pain that they're going through, but there was 3 people in the business that had enormous help in helping me get into it. Clive Cussler at the University of Oklahoma. Yeah, I was up with him one night at 3 or 4 o'clock and just tipping the bottle and talking, and everybody I noticed was, the ladies are all flirting with him, but I was sitting there listening. I wanted to hear what the guy had to say, you know. And Jory Sherman is probably the reason I write Westerns, a writer from Branson. Jory kept saying, Johnny Quarles, that looked good on a Western. But Judy Wall was it. Now, she'll humbly probably deny that, but she knows that she helped me greatly when I got started. Judy was the first writer that read my first book, and she read it and gave a quote. But she always encouraged me, and so consequently she became like a hero to me. And I remember before I ever got published, I read a big thing, or maybe it's about the same time, where she back when the Sunday Oklahoman would write about writers from Oklahoma instead of those big coffee table books, they did a story about her, you know, where she'd signed a big contract. But I feel really grateful to her, and she knows that's true. I don't say that for this, you know, but you have to have help along the way, and I think it's important that we do help people and we don't be condescending to writers. And I'll turn it back over to ladies, but I'll say one other thing about the reason we have so many writers in Oklahoma. The country used to be back in the east, and adventurous people moved west. The real wild fruitcakes ended up in California, and the ones that wasn't adventurous stayed back east. The solid people ended up, I think this is true, ended up right here in Oklahoma. They have the adventure of the people, you know, that took off, and they have the same thing the Californians have, only not as much of it, and they have the old ways of the East Coast. So I really think there's something to do with that, because I've never lived anywhere in my life that the people are nicer and better people than right here in Oklahoma.
And a lot of them are writing books, and we don't even know it.
Yes. Well, and Carol and I were just talking about how part of our reputation with our publishers and with our agents and everything is being as very cooperative, very hardworking, nice, sane people. And I get the impression that other writers aren't that way. And being from Oklahoma, I wouldn't think of being any other way than hardworking and cooperative. I wouldn't think of being a difficult person. And but I've had people in New York ask me if it's in the water down here. They are aware that there are a disproportionate number of successful writers in this state, and maybe it is because we pick up the phone and talk to each other. If I don't see these guys, I call them. We talk, and we lament with each other when things aren't going well, and we encourage each other. And I also think that when you pick up the phone and there is an aspiring writer on the other end, we take the time. I mean, I just had a phone call this morning from a lawyer in Oklahoma City who says, I can't stand it anymore, I want to write screenplays. And I really, you know, I told him what I you know, you know, I offered what suggestions I could, and I think that's true of any writer. We all get those phone calls, and we all take the time to help out, and that's important.
I can
People
echo
did that for us.
I can echo that also. I think we have two romance chapters here in Oklahoma that are affiliated with the National Romance Writers of America. And we are known, our chapters are known throughout the United States as the most sharing, the most caring. And we have a reputation. We also have one of the highest published ratios of any of the other chapters in the country. I think about almost 40% of our members are published authors. And every one of those authors shows up at the meetings and they'll help. They share their expertise. They share their time. We're getting ready for our national convention in Dallas next month. And our last meeting last week, it was really fun. We role played. We had editors and agents sitting around the table, and then we sent everybody out into the hall. And I was there with a stopwatch. I let them in for 3 minutes, and then threw them out, and let them in, and threw them out, so they could practice pitching their books. And it was
What a great
What an
idea!
excellent idea.
Yes.
it really was. It was a lot of fun. We all learned a lot, and we all learned a lot. And it just is it's a very caring, sharing environment.
Well, and I think one thing that I always say to writers who have not yet been published, they will be very shy and uncomfortable, and they'll sidle up to you and say, well, you know, I haven't sold anything yet. And I said, well, you know, you've got to remember that every published author was once an unpublished author.
Exactly.
You see. And it's I don't think you will find condescension among the real writers, because we all know how difficult it is and how fortuitous publishing is. And I think one of my favorite stories is one of Oklahoma's greatest writers, although he hasn't lived here in many years, but that's Tony Hillerman. And Tony Hillerman in an interview once was quoted as saying, you don't have to be published to be a successful writer. So.
And I think he also, didn't he get told, this is a pretty good story if you just take the Indians out?
Yes, that's a true story. Yes.
Well, I can believe a publisher saying that, really.
It was his agent,
Oh,
I believe it was, that
He
wanted
said
him
that.
to take those Indians out.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, that's kind of a lesson, because all of you know that you just have to keep trying and doing it.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
heavens,
nobody
yes.
ever was successful by giving up.
No.
No, you do have to keep trying. And very, very few people get the first or the second or even the third book that they write published. And that's a lot. That's years of effort that just goes in the trash can or the top of the closet and never sees the light of day. And so it is a discouraging beginning, and that just goes with the territory.
And that's why what Johnny said is so important, is that we learn from each other far more. We've all taken the courses, but in the terms of the School of Hard Knocks, the best way you learn is from each other. And when I started, everything I know about the business, I learned from my other writers. You know, how to get out there, how to pitch your book, how to talk without making too much a fool of yourself, and the only way you can do that is from learning from each other.
Of course, you did sell your first book. I know.
Well, every once in a while it happens.
Every once in a while. I know one of the, Deborah Chester sold her, who also teaches at the University of Oklahoma, and, you know, at like about age 22, sold her first book, and it was like, I don't believe this. You're supposed to be old and have a lot of manuscripts around before you sell.
And have worked at a day job long enough to get
Oh, yes.
retirement before you do that.
Exactly.
Well, that again is one of the impressive things, is the number of people that here in Oklahoma that make a living with their writing. Their writing is their only business. There are also a lot of them who still have their day job.
I still have a day job at the University of Oklahoma. I do. I have
Doesn't
worked.
blow your money, though.
I know.
Pays more than all of us.
Well, I just don't want to be a bag lady some days. So.
Well, except I look back on the years I have been writing for, 33 years. My first book came out in 1964. It was a juvenile mystery. And I've had lots of failures and lots of successes, but for many years, in fact, for one period of 7 years, I didn't sell any books, and I wrote seven books in those 7 years. And my husband has supported me all of these years, and I now finally do make enough to live as a writer. but I've always been so appreciative of the kind of support that I received through the years. And there were years when I made $300, and you know, it was tough.
Well, that's the other thing that surprised me about the business is, of course, I started in 1992. I wrote my first book, and
got it published?
yeah,
Well, I'm making a liar out of it.
but it's
I didn't
sold.
get my first one published. Number 4 got published.
But it's just surprising to me how long it takes for any money for you to see any money off your books. It sold. I sold in '92. It came out in '94, and you don't start seeing royalties on it until, like, you know, '95. So even if you sell your book tomorrow, it's going to be 3 or 4 years before you really start seeing any money.
The nice thing about the romances, though, is, you know, 15 years later,
I know you're still getting them.
a little money from Japan and a little money from.
I just got one from Iceland. I am now published in Iceland. I can't read it, but it's fine.
Well, I think that is, again, one of the things that Oklahomans get from all of the support from their support groups and everything is the knowledge that, which I have learned really from talking with you all, is that writing the book is really just the beginning of the situation.
Well, and you have to find your niche. And, you know, I was going to write the great American novel and couldn't sell those great American novels. And but I spent many years writing romances, which wasn't, I think I was a really good romance writer. I kind of wrote very serious ones, but I really wanted to get back to writing another kind, you know, more the family drama kind of thing. And finally, after about 12 or 13 romances, somebody took a chance on letting me write another kind of book. And so you have to be sensible about it. The world didn't want my great American novel, so I got busy and I found something. I wrote something that the world did want, and enjoyed. Had a nice run with that.
Well, and you're continuing with it too.
Well, but yeah, with a different kind of book, which was kind of what I wanted to write in the first place.
But that's a good point, though. I mean, you build up your name and you do the following, and a lot of authors I know that have made that transition. They start in one field, may write for mysteries, may write true confessions, may write whatever you can do to polish your skills and hone your and make some money and eat.
I wrote obituaries. I wrote I wrote a great obituary. That was back when they still published long ones in Sooner Magazine at OU. And when I wanted to write fiction, but I wrote a lot of nonfiction too. And in fact, I still do. Because I needed to be a writer, and I needed to see my words in print, and I was going to get them in print one way or the other. And so I think a lot of times people set their goals, they're not willing to take anything less in the beginning, and you have to be realistic. This is one of the things. If you call me up, the aspiring writers call me up, I'll tell them that, whether they want to hear it or not. Find some way to get yourself published so that you can feel like a writer and feel good about being a writer.
Well, I remember being told by somebody who is not a writer, but he was down at OU and took some writing courses with when some very big names were just learning, and he would sit in the student union and listen to them talk about stories they were doing for True Confessions and some of those other things. And he said they were so serious about it, and this was just True Confessions. And he said, I didn't understand it at that time. Now I do. That they're internationally known writers, that they took it all seriously, even these little things. Very seriously.
Anybody that says that writing is something easy hasn't put their bottom in that chair for 18 hours a day
and then tried to sell it.
Well, I think the one caveat I would give to an aspiring writer is that you have to write what is true to your heart. You have to write what you care about, because if you don't care about it, nobody else is ever going to care. And obviously in my life, my passion is for mysteries. There was a period when mysteries were not being published, especially mysteries by American women, and I tried to write romances. And the truth of the matter is my daughter said, Mother, you're just not romantic. And that's true. I mean, it is true, because there are different ways of looking at life. And I think you will find that most mystery writers are very factual and very attuned to, there's very little of fantasy in a mystery. You know, it has to be constructed within the confines of what ordinary life is really like. There's not that magic that you have in a romance novel. And I tried very hard, and I never could do it. And one of the few writers I've known that successfully writes both true mysteries and true romances is Jean Hager. And she could do both. And I was so jealous. I couldn't do it.
Well, Carolyn, you do pretty well at what you do.
Well, Judy, I'll tell my favorite story. Okay. I tried to disguise a mystery as a romance, and I got a letter from an editor, and she said, you must increase the sexual tension. I want to that, you know. So I called Judy, this is years ago, and I said, hey, Judy, I said, what does this romance editor mean? Increase the sexual tension. There was this long silence. And finally, Judy said, Carolyn, why don't you write mysteries? And you were right.
And I think that's a great demonstration again of the kind of support and why Oklahoma has so many writers, and I think will continue to have them.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, we also, I mean, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, OWFI, the Oklahoma Federation of Writers, has an annual conference that's very well attended. They had New York editors and agents come in. It attracts people. Sisters in Crime organization has local chapters. I know the Western Writers of America has an active group. One of our authors, Lynn Murphy, who writes as Georgina Gentry, is very active in the Western Writers of America. And there's a lot of things going on that can get people involved and keep them involved, where you may not have. Well, I know when I first started, I was in New Mexico, and it's so spread out that there was nothing. There was no support organization. I finally joined one of the other groups, but it does help. It's a lonely occupation, writing is, and it helps to have that networking and that contact.
Well, in the first writers' conference I ever went to at the University of Oklahoma, Jack Bickham, Robert L. Duncan, and Marilyn Harris were all there. I knew these people as writers. I'd read their books. I didn't know they lived and worked in Oklahoma. And that gave me such a shot in the arm. It's like, well, if they live in Oklahoma and I live in Oklahoma, maybe I too can be a writer. And then when I saw Marilyn Harris shopping at the same grocery store I shop at, it was like, I can do it too. I mean, she has to buy groceries, I have to buy groceries, therefore I can be a writer. I don't know. There was just some real boost there. And so I think the fact that there are so many writers around gives people,
We figured out why there's so many good romance writers in Oklahoma, though. It's all these long, tall, handsome cowboys that are around.
We get inspired, right?
It's the cowboy boots, Marlene. No, I really think that it is important that there are more of you. As you say, writing's a lonely profession, but you do, today you have to know how to make that 3-minute pitch.
Yes.
You have to know what kind of cover letter when you send your things off.
And Johnny's the best at that. I mean, he'll pick up the phone and call people. He is a master at pitching his books, and I think that's a little bit of, I mean, I wish you'd do a school on that. Carolyn's a really good person at that, too. Maybe you all ought to collaborate on for us that don't do that very well.
I never think about it. I just, I never think about writing. You know how I've kept my sanity in this business is it's one of the most important parts of my life. And I'll have them hit me here in a minute. I'll explain why.
No, you're right.
You know, last night, Dusty, he was going to 8th grade, at a baseball game, and I was at one ballpark, and our kindergartner, little gal, Katie, was playing a t-ball game, so Wendy's at that. It's across town.
It's more.
And that was our whole life, was that. It wasn't about writing.
That's right.
And honestly, I always had that ability when I was in radio and TV and wherever I've worked. When I leave it, I never think about it. And so I never think about writing unless I'm writing.
I think writing is the byproduct,
Yeah,
living,
right.
and it isn't living. It isn't everything. It
No.
is, yeah.
I don't think there's no learn. You know, I'm a novelist in residence at Phillips University. And I don't think I think you've got to want to write to be a writer, number one. And I don't know that there's any magic that any one of us can put on someone to make a writer out of them.
Yeah.
I think we're warriors of life. You know, it's just like Wendy, and I probably told this on your show, BJ, but Wendy made a comment one time. It's always stuck with me. There was a flyer on this table in this University of South Carolina basketball office, and the basketball coach's wife, and Wendy, was talking, and she said, you know, you and I noticed that flyer, and Johnny sees the dead fly in the corner. Maybe that's what writers are. You know, we're just the voyeurs who maybe don't even know why ourselves we can do it, because I certainly don't know why that I've been successful doing this, but I don't try to examine it either. But I have no qualms about calling somebody up and saying, look, this is what the book's about, and would you like to read it? You know, and there's no, you know, most people do. I look at it like this, don't you, Carolyn, that they want it to be a great book.
That's true.
You know, a lot of people say, oh, those guys don't want, they really want it to be a great book. They want it to be a good book.
Do.
So I never look at it as being that I've written anything great, but I don't look at it that I've written anything bad either.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of what Carolyn and Judy were talking about being true. You have something coming out of you that you want to say. And you have to live life, I guess, to have something to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Johnny, did you say we are voyeurs of life or warriors of
I
life?
think it was warriors.
warriors.
I think we're
I
voyeurs.
think we're warriors.
I think we're
What's going on
voyeurs.
in
I
life.
think we are too.
And it's,
Maybe we're both. No, I think voyeurs is a
yeah.
perfect good
And I
word.
always hear over 30, let's say.
That's
I
putting it
think-
very kindly.
Barely.
My agent told me I was worried about getting older one time on one of those monumental birthdays. And he said, John, he said, you're just a baby as a writer. I said, writing is the only profession that you actually get better when you get older.
true.
It's because it's just life, you just experience it more.
Yeah, we're just sweet young things when it comes
Yes.
to writing.
Yes.
So
That's
we've
right.
got lots of years left.
I think that's a wonderful note to close this on. We have run out of time with our discussion, and I do want to thank all of you for being with
thank
me
you,
tonight.
BJ.
And I want to reintroduce you very, very quickly. We've had Carolyn Hart and Judith Henry Wall, and Johnny Quarles, and Merlene Lovelace. And be sure and join us next week when we'll have another great group of Oklahoma writers.